Hello everyone, I'm Chris Bombolis, your MC for today. On behalf of Workplace Health and Safety Queensland, welcome to our special Work Well presentation. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples watching today. If you have any technical problems, please make sure the sound on your computer is turned on and try refreshing your browser. If that doesn't work, contact us via the Q&A chat box on the right of your screen. You can also make this presentation full screen, and you can do this by selecting the four small arrows next to the volume bar at the bottom of your screen. I'm delighted now to introduce today's speaker, Dr Gregory Zelic. Greg kicked off his professional journey as an academic, teaching, mentoring and exploring the edges of behavioural neurosciences for 10 plus years. He joined the public sector a few years ago, determined to commit his skills and efforts towards improving lives. Diving into the focuses of the Centre for Work, Health and Safety, Greg will address the future of work in today's talk. If you have any questions for him today, type them into the Q&A chat box on the right of your screen. We'll get to those during his presentation if necessary, otherwise we'll hold them off till the end of his presentation. Let's head down to Sydney and welcome in Greg from the Centre of Work, Health and Safety. G'day, Greg.
Good day, Chris. Thanks for this very nice introduction. Look, it's great to be here. Thank you to the organization team to organize this. It's a lot of organization. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the team and the good work that we're doing at the Centre for Work, Health and Safety. Before I start, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all meet today. I call myself not from Sydney, but from Wollongong in New South Wales, and which was originally habited by the Dharawal people. I pay my respect to all elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nation people present with us today. So the topic of the day is government research and data science, and I hope to make this as interesting as it can be, really. But as Chris mentioned, if you do have any question, ask them please as I go. So it gives me first a break, and also for you the opportunity to have a break from my very strong French accent. If not, I will keep talking for 45 minutes. So today I will first talk about the Centre for Work and Safety, what it is about, why we were created and what we do and how we do things. Then we spend a bit of time on the future world of work, what it means to us and a bit of its challenges, but also the opportunities that it presents. And then we finish with the program of work of the Centre addressing the future world of work. And I will deep dive a little bit into that. All right, the Centre. So we were created in 2017. And so the Centre for Work and Safety is an initiative of Safe Work New South Wales. This is the regulator of work and safety in New South Wales. And the initiative came out of two very strong observations that Safe Work did about research in work and safety. The first observation is that research in work and safety lacked specificity. Often the research was a byproduct of other research, so it was not the primary focus of the research. And basically, it failed to include the full range of perspective that you can find in the work and safety sphere. And I mean the workers, I mean the designers, the business owners, the association of industry and workers association, etc., etc. The issue with this is that if you don't see the full picture, then you only see part of it, and what you see is skewed. All right. So what we needed there was a research that was entirely focused on work and safety, dedicated to the subject of harm prevention, really. The second observation from Safe Work is that research in work and safety lacked impact. I don't think that was specific to, or that is specific to work and safety, really, but traditional research is done in a way that the primary focus is to get is the academic output. So, basically the article that you publish in very prestigious journal, which is great. But from a business perspective or a regulatory perspective, what you want is the practical impact that this research has, right? And traditional research wasn't just impacting the day-to-day on the work site, right? So what we needed here was a research that was primarily focusing on delivering practical output, things that could be taken away to directly prevent harm in work sites, okay? And so that is why the center was created in 2017, 6 years ago. And look, how do we do things differently at the center? I give it away a little bit in the title. 3 keywords: solutions, evidence-based, and practical. Solutions, this is because this is what we do. Like, we develop, test, and deliver solutions. All right. And this is the solution is the pointy end of a process that starts with either a problem to solve or a need to address. Right? So this means that our process starts with a problem, a need that we identify, that we're able to identify, and research data science is basically our methods to develop and deliver these solutions to this problem slash need. Okay. The clients of our solutions, I should call them that way, businesses, in Australia, particularly in New South Wales, obviously, but also in Australia. So we deliver tools for businesses to directly use so that they can prevent harm directly in their workplace. I will give some example later of some of those tools. But also the regulators in Australia. So we work with Safe Work New South Wales, but the solution that we provide to Safe Work are applicable to other regulators in Australia, obviously. And so I'll give some example later on about the radar. I explain what it is about, and a tool for getting the regulators ready for what's coming for the future world of work. Okay. Evidence-based, the second keyword, this is basically our method. So research and data science are not the primary focus of what we do. The primary focus, as I said before, is the solution. The research and data science, that's the way we get there. All right. Having this approach in general give us a lot of flexibility about what we do in research or data science and how we combine them together. What's most suitable to develop a solution to a problem. All right. So we don't focus on what's the academic output at the end of the process. We focus on what's best, basically, to deliver the solution that we want to deliver. All right. Practical is perhaps the most important of these keywords, is because whatever we do, we want it to be useful, usable, and used. Obviously, we have a process in place to be able to, for example, record the way our tools are being used. I give an example of this easy to do work and safety toolkit that we published in October 2020. In 1 year, this toolkit had almost 200,000 hits on our website, almost 20,000 downloads, and 15,000 hard copy that were ordered by small business. So that's research that's not only insightful, it's research that it's impactful, right? And that's our point of difference. My last slide about us is that how do we make this happen? How do we work? So we are a government entity, but we work a little bit different from other government entities that work in collaboration with academic partners. So we don't give a lump sum of money at the beginning of the process and see you later 2 years after to understand the output. We have a project team within the center that work hand in hand with our research partner. All right. We have contracts with them, multi-phase contract. And so at each phase of the contract, what we do is what we call generally co-design, is that we look at what we've done and whether what we plan for the next phase is still appropriate or not. And if we need to change it, then we change it. Okay, so it's a very flexible approach to maximize the suitability of the solution that we provide. Okay. So that's about us. The future world of work now, we hear a lot about it. It's kind of a buzzword. I want to explain what I mean by future world of work. It's everything that's new, emerging futures ways of working. And as I see it, there are different ways that these new, emerging future ways of working has been triggered. It's either by a new technology. So today we're going to talk a little bit about collaborative robots or cobots. We're also going to talk about artificial intelligence systems that are being introduced and used in the workplace today. So that's a trigger, a new technology being, introduced in the workplace. A new type of work. on the photo there, it's a food delivery rider. So here I will talk a little bit about task-based gig economy, whether it's food delivery, whether it's in-home carers as well. But also, nowadays you have different type of works, like as you will know, there's some influencers on social media platforms. That's a job, and that's a way to win to win his life. So it's a new type of work that is emerge. New practice as well, and that's related to things that existed but change over time. And flexible working is a good example. Working from home was happened before COVID, but since COVID is basically become the norm for office-based workers. And so again, like societal events there just triggered a new practice, really, or the explosion of a practice. All right, the history of the forklift. I brought this timeline here to show, to basically support some important point I want to make about new and emerging ways of working. The first point I want to make is that these are not a new things. Right? Today we're talking about new and emerging ways of working. 50 years ago, they were talking about it. In 50 years' time, we still talk about it. Right? We still be a topic. 50 years ago, in the 1930s, the forklift was just invented, the first forklift. And then 10 years later, they basically standardized the size of the pallet. And that was a trigger for an explosion of the forklift on work sites. They were used everywhere. So from one year to the other, like, we will see forklift everywhere. And at the time, that was a new way of working. All right, so it's a perpetual question, the question of new and emerging ways of working. That's my first point. My second point is the safety gap. So if you look at the history of forklift, after the explosion of the use of forklift, eventually, workers were carrying more heavy loads and bringing them to higher heights, and obviously, like, the incidents happening just increased dramatically. And so in the 60s, they started developing this forklift with overhead quads. And that was the first consideration of safety in the forklift sector, really. Later on, you will have, traffic management consideration, etc. So you have some kind of 30 years gap here between the explosion of the use of the forklift in the 30s and the first safety consideration in the 60s. Okay. Obviously, as a regulator or work and safety professional, what we want to is to close this gap. Make sure that we have the safety solutions before the harms are created on a large scale. And that brings me to this slide about the challenges of new and emerging ways of working. So, as I mentioned, we want to close this gap, this safety gap. But the difficulty for the regulator and the work and safety professional is that they are very difficult to anticipate. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's going to be the next new ways of working, or whether, working from home, for example, is going to explode and become the norm. Nobody anticipated COVID. The second challenge is that all these new and emerging ways of working, they lead to change in the work environment. Be it a change of the definition of work, a change of the definition, the different roles and responsibility in the workplace, a change in the processes and the system related to health and safety. So the work environment is change. And we don't really know the implication of that change from a work and safety perspective. And for good reason, we have new and emerging ways of working. They attracted limited scrutiny. So the knowledge bank about those is very thin. You take electric vehicle, for instance. We don't know much. We know a little bit of the harms that they create, but we don't really know much about future harm that they might create, etc., because they have attracted limited scrutiny. The last challenge is, are we still relevant? And that brings that refers to whether the regulatory system that we have as a regulator, or the safety system that you might have as a work and safety professional, are still adapted, or will continue to be suitable for regulating or managing the risk of these new and emerging ways of working. All right. So that's a program at the center to address the future world of work, and obviously mimics a little bit these challenges and that I just talked about. Um, the three main axes in our program. The first one is get ahead of the game. Um, what we want here is really better understand the work and safety implication of the new and emerging ways of working. All right, with the idea that obviously that the earlier we understand the problem, the earlier we can design solution to it, and the earlier we can offer solutions to businesses to already prevent harm before the emerging practice become something that is adopted as at a larger scale. The second program is more of an opportunity of the future. So we want to look at the future from an opportunity perspective, really, and leverage of this new technological development to create new solutions to all problems. Progress means that we can do today what we couldn't do necessarily yesterday. And we want to use that to explore opportunities to use this new technological development to um, better prevent harm that exists already. And the last one, obviously, is reassess and prepare. That's for the regulator. So we want to support the regulator here in addressing the current generation of new and emerging ways of working. And we also want to support the regulator in preparing for the next generation of new and emerging ways of working. All right. So we discuss a bit of the work that the center is undertaking under these three main axes of programs. All right. Okay, so starting with our get ahead of the game program of work. So the center is leading a series of projects here examining the mechanism of harm prevention in the workplace of tomorrow. And what we want is create new knowledge and tools to support this work environment. So I'm going to talk about two projects in particular, one about the artificial intelligence systems in the workplace and one about collaborative robots, cobots. These are not the only project that we have in this program. Very soon we're going to complete a project on, I mentioned gig economy earlier, so to prevent harm towards in-home carers that have been engaged through gig economy platform. So that's the health sector of the gig economy. AI. So artificial intelligence is obviously a big client of us. When you talk about the future, you talk about AI. So I'm not going to go through the introduction of what is AI and different type of AI system and all these things. What I will say though is that there are simulation, a very strong simulation that by 2030, 70% of companies will have adopted at least one type of AI technology. All right. So AI is barely a new thing, and it's on its way to be an integrated part of the workplace in different shape or form. Saying that, little is known about the harms, the risks that are created with the introduction and the use of AI system in the workplace. Okay, so that's our motto there. So we partner with the University of Adelaide, in particular with the South Australian Centre for Economic Studies there, and the Australian Institute for Machine Learning. We also partnered with the Flinders University of South Australia, and we did literature review. We did a series of consultations with AI experts, with work and safety professionals, policymakers, and people from organizations that had adopted AI or were considering adopting AI. And the first thing that we wanted to do there is understand the risks that were associated with the use of AI in the workplace. And look, as expected, as I mentioned earlier, this is not a topic that has attracted a lot of scrutiny. So we did not find a lot of evidence. It was not surprising. Most consideration about AI were towards ethical risk to consumer that had potential legislative or financial consequences on the business, right? But not much really from the perspective of the safety and the health of workers. So through the project and the review and the consultation that were undertaken, we actually came up with the first registry of AI related risk to consider when you introduce and use AI system in the workplace. The second axis of this work was to understand as well current practices in regard to managing work and safety for AI systems. And again, we did not find one typical model that were used by organizations. As a matter of fact, the risk were often a late consideration in those organizations due to the lack of support material. People just, didn't know how to do it in the first place. So that brings us to the third axis of this work, which was to develop something for business to use. So we developed a risk assessment tool to assist business in identifying first, assessing second, and prioritizing third the work of safety risks that were related to the use and the introduction of AI system in the workplace. Okay? We call this the AI work of safety scorecard. It's available on our website. You can freely download it. It provides a list of work and safety risks that can be reviewed and prioritized in the context of your workplace. This is really what it looks like as a download. At the moment, we're working on the digitalization of this, so it will be available in a more user-friendly format, I would say. So you can see, so it's basically a list of risks, sorry. You can see there from risk 1 to risk 7. And all these risks are related to a certain stage of the development of the AI, from design to the application of the AI system in the workplace. And basically, as a business, you can have a look at all these risks and rate the potential consequence of this risk in your work site and the likelihood of this risk on your work site. And it gives you with some kind of priority list of risks that have high level of risk, really. Okay. What we're doing now is working, actually we completed this work, we're about to publishing it, is working now on risk mitigation strategy to best manage those risks once you have identified them as a business. And again, this is not a work that can be done easily because AI is new, so the experts in the domain are quite new. So we had consultation with people across the world that were either or both, AI experts and work and safety professionals. All right. The second project here, it's about cobots. So look, similar background than the AI system, really. Cobots are just emerging, they're used already. And there are projections that the use and the introduction of cobots in the workplace is going to explode in the next years or so. What's a collaborative robot? First of all, it's one of the type of robots that we will find on the workplace. This particular type, the worker work simultaneously with the robot in a shared workplace. So there is contact between the two, and it's a desired contact. There are other types of robots, and this is not within the scope of this project. You find cobots typically in tasks of pick and place, packaging, etc. So we partner here with UTS and the Center for Advanced Manufacturing School of Mechanical and Mechatronic Engineering. That was a mouthful. Very smart people. They actually have a warehouse with a lot of different cobots, so they were able to do a lot of experiment on cobots on site. And we had a systematic evidence-based approach. It's a research approach, really. Basically, we did again like a scan of the literature, what's available out there, and most importantly, we consulted with all cobot stakeholders, manufacturers, distributors and suppliers, integrators, cobot users, potential cobot users, and also subject matter experts and researchers, people that were working on this. What we've done is develop a holistic understanding of the work practice really so far and the behaviors within the cobot industry. But also the potential risk and harm to workers. We also explore the different resources on safety measures that were already available and understand how the risk and harm were currently being addressed by organizations. Okay? That led us to develop a series of guidelines. So we developed and we tested some guidelines that covers across the entire life cycle of cobots, from design to their introduction and the use in the workplace. So these are the guidelines, as you can see. look, these guidelines, they can be used, or again, you can freely download them on our website. They can be used as individual documents. You can see what they are. There's a risk assessment tool similar to the AI one that I just presented. There's a safety checklist that you can use as a business. There are some guidance on designing a safe cobot workplace, and some guidance on safe human cobot interaction. So different guidelines for different purpose. Um, all right, that brings us to the second program, which is using the future as an opportunity to create smarter solutions for all problems, right? Um, so we want to leverage of this new technology development and explore if there is any way to develop a solution for those problems that we had for a long time. So I want to talk now about building information modeling. Building information modeling is not a new thing, but it has emerged really from the rise of digital engineering in the last few years. BIM, as we call it, is basically a digital twin of a building. Okay, and that's a 3D model-based process that maps the physical and functional characteristic of a structure. What it does is that it aids decision making through the planning, the design, and the construction phases of the structure, but also in the ongoing management of the building and infrastructure. Right. The benefits of BIM have been recognized worldwide. There's no doubt about it. The fact, though, is that there's a gap. It has never been used, or it's very not well used, I should say, for the management of, or the continuous management of work and safety. And the reason for this is that work and safety management is typically done outside of this kind of digital platform, outside of BIM, in more traditional non-digital platforms. All right, so we partner with Torrance University and Western University on this project, and we explore the use of BIM for work and safety management, including the barriers, the enablers, and the potential benefits and consequences from moving from a traditional platform for managing work and safety to this kind of digital BIM platform. The outcome of this was, the output, I should say, is that we developed a set of guidelines to enable work and safety management using BIM from the procurement phase. So that was one of the findings, is that for this kind of building project, you need to make it happen from the procurement phase. It's very difficult to change from a traditional platform to a digital platform in the course of a project. And so, like you can see here, the different guidelines that are available to businesses to help with this process. A second example of using new technological development to develop new solutions is exposure to respirable crystalline silica, so RCS. Look, this has attracted a lot of attention in media, especially in the last year, with the increase of awareness of silicosis from workers that cut stones in particular. Look, there are controls available to prevent the exposure to RCS, wet cutting, ventilations, mark and hair monitor as well. The limitation, I would say, is that monitoring your exposure at the moment is not optimal. So what you do is you take a sample, you send it to the lab, and 2 weeks after, or with a bit of delays, you have a bit of an idea of what was your exposure, when you took the sample. So what we wanted to do, what we explore with the center, is there a way to develop a project that will inform the worker in real time about the exposure to RCS. All right. So what we've done is partner with Trolex. They're based in UK, but they have some connection in Australia, obviously. And that's the jam. So they're working on dust monitoring for years, and basically we support them in focusing their work on developing something for a real-time detector of exposure to RCS. All right. So after 3 years of collaboration, they put to market last year the AIXS, which is the first of its kind, has been recognized and awarded in many space. It's still being tested as any new innovations, but it provided with the opportunity to monitor in real time exposure to RCS. And that's the first. All right, that brings us to the last axis of our program, which is around focusing really on the regulator and reassessing and preparing the regulator for the future world of work. I'm not going to talk about the regulatory readiness tool, but I'm going to say a few words. It's this project is going to come to completion soon, so I will leave you with it when we publish it, and you can learn more about this. What we wanted to do here is provide the regulators with work safety regulator with a tool that they could use to identify the gaps of their processes and their regulatory practices in the face of these new and emerging ways of working. All right. Is there a gap in legislation? Is the work, well defined? Do we have a gap in capabilities? Do we need to work on the capability of our inspectorate, for example, to better regulate those practices, etc., etc. So through consultation and consultation process as well, here we created a gap assessment tool that can be used now by our regulators to identify those gaps created by the regulation of these new and emerging ways of working. The radar, it's another initiative from this year, really. It's quite new. I have some slides on this one. So it's a biannual report, really, that synthesizes the latest data on work and safety issues, trends, and insights. The radar highlights the current state of play with regard to work and safety in and outside of Australia. We have three keywords here. What we look at is data that is current, so it's in the last 6 months, so it's local. So in some ways, we're looking at information that impact Australian workplaces. It's also relevant, obviously, to the work safety regulator and professional, right? So, and these three keywords really guide our work in the radar space. So we already published the first edition of the radar. That was in April this year, and in a couple of weeks we will publish the second edition of it. So watch this space. How we do it is also interesting. So I mentioned earlier that research and data science are tools that we use for the purpose of developing solutions, and that's a very good example here. We use everything we have to make the radar happen. So we use data science. We analyze databases to identify the different trends in regard to a mechanism of injury, but also non-compliance, in particular in New South Wales. We also look at social media platforms. What are people talking about when they talk about work health and safety? What's important to them? Is there anything that is arising, in the recently? Then we do our work as a researchers of reviewing. So we review, what has been published from an academic perspective, but also in the grey literature. So what has been published from those government and regulatory agencies all over the world, but also the different industry and workers association in Australia, outside of Australia, etc., and whatever is relevant to us here in Australia. And the last aspect of our data collection process is consultation. So we created this Australian Work Safety Survey, which is really an opportunity for all workers in Australia every 6 months to have a say and to tell us a little bit what's happening in their workplace, especially from a work safety perspective. I want to discuss this a little bit later. We also consult with, we have connection with all jurisdictions or regulators in Australia. So we consult with their inspectors, understand what are they seeing on the ground that's new and that we should be aware of as a regulator. A new behavior, new attitudes, a new risk to workers, new solution perhaps that we should be aware of. And we have a bit of a similar consultation with the Australian Institute of Health and Safety. So we connected with the senior professionals, and that gives us the opportunity to use their experience to also understand what are they seeing as important right now, that we need to know. All right. The Australian survey, give a bit of an idea of what type of data we're collecting here. I think it's quite interesting. So there is a separate report that is published about the survey. Will be published again in a couple of weeks. It goes along with the radar report. But the survey, so we ask workers about their exposure to hazard, harassment, reporting practices, the action that has been taken from the business in regard to these reports. We ask them about their awareness of right and responsibility in worker safety, about their empowerment to participate in worker safety discussions. We also ask them about their workplace, right? And so the system that the workplace has in place in regard to worker safety, the commitment of their workplace in regard to worker safety, and the type of barriers and enablers to good worker safety that they're seeing in their workplace. We also have a section where we ask them about the future world of work, if there is any new risk, new solutions, so similar to what we do with the inspectors and the senior worker safety professionals. We ask them, as a worker, what are you seeing in the workplace that is new, new risk to your health and safety, a new solution perhaps to prevent harm. These are results from the previous survey that we did back in January this year. So you can read the barriers, the drivers. Perhaps most importantly, here we find that, so we had a bit more than 1,000 respondents to this survey, almost 700, yes, of them felt burnout. So that's 2 out of 3 respondents felt burnout. And so that was one of the key insights of this survey, is that the level of psychosocial harm in the workforce was quite high. Workplace bullying as well, so 33%. That means that 1 out of 3 of respondents experience bullying at work regularly, and by regularly here we mean on a monthly basis, and so quite high level of exposure to bullying as well. Back to the radar, that's the structure of it. So when you look at the radar report, this is what you're going to get from insight perspective. You're going to get general insight about the geopolitical landscape of worker safety, economy, what's happening from a regulation perspective. Then we have a section about harms. So, what's happening in you have to psychosocial harm and physical harm, anything that we need to know. A section on the future world of work. That's new and emerging ways of working typically, and the harms that are created. Last time around we had a spotlight on electrical vehicles, so a bit more information on that topic. And then we have sector specific, a sector specific section where we put there some trends inside that are very specific to a sector, let's say construction or agriculture. Some of the insight we found back in April. So the first one is we find continued financial pressures are influencing attitude towards safety. So basically, businesses were experiencing a lot of geopolitical and economic pressures, like from inflation, labor shortage, supply chain disruptions, and this means that the priority placed on worker safety from those businesses will be challenged, right? So there will be an expectation that business focus less on worker safety, basically. We also, from the consultation, understood that there was an emergence of competency and acceptance of unsafe practices. In particular, consultation with inspectors, senior worker safety professional confirmed that point. One of the second key findings I mentioned earlier is that the experience of psychosocial harm, including burnout and harassment, as I mentioned, nearly 2/3 of respondents in the survey were feeling burnout. And what we found through our consultation within the survey, but also with inspectors and senior professionals, is that the main drivers was a normalization of chronic understaffing. So a normalization of job demands. I'm busy because we don't have the staff, and that's normal. Also, another driver was the limited acknowledgement and limited action taken by businesses against bullying and harassment when it was reported. Right, so that was another insight. And these are drivers for workers feeling burnout. Another key insight for regulators was the movement of strengthening actions to address work and safety concerns by regulators. In particular, in New South Wales, laws were made in regard to assault to frontline health and emergency service workers, which will attract a very harsher sentence of up to 14 years in jail. And you can see the other insight here. But very interesting to regulators to see what's being done nationally from a regulation perspective. And also, one of the key findings was around this new area of regulatory disruption, so artificial intelligence. Again, we had a section on this. Electrical vehicle, we had a spotlight on this last time. We saw, doing some data analytics on the social media platform, we saw an increased interest in electrical vehicle in general. And this combined with the current poor regulation that we have on storage and use of electrical battery, the insight was that there might be an increase of harm in that space. And professional athletes as well, a bit of a change for regulators, as there was some inquiry at the Senate in regard to professional athletes and the current exemption of paid professional athlete from current workers' compensation scheme. So again, another things to consider for regulators. That's my takeaway slide. So look, keeping afloat of the future world of work is a challenging thing, and it's not something that you can do quickly. But thankfully, at the center, this is one of our focus. So we have a dedicated focus on this. Regularly, we publish evidence, about the work and safety implication of new ways of working, and this is ongoing work. So you will see more and more publication from our hand on this. We also publish plug and play tools, to directly prevent harm. So these tools can be used by workplace to directly prevent harm, or at least, at the very least, identify, prioritizing potential risks that are created through these new ways of working. As I mentioned, we have an ongoing program on the future world of work, so we regularly publish insights that are valuable for the work safety professionals and regulators. Okay, you can follow us on all social media platforms. We present everywhere. We also launched last 3 months ago a quarterly newsletter, the Work and Safety Insight, and we have some very interesting contribution here from industry experts, but also academics, but work and safety passionate, I would say, on the topic of work and safety. So I encourage you to follow this newsletter. It's for free every 3 months as well. We have a publication. That's my very last slide, and it's about the Work Congress, the 23rd Work Congress that is going to happen in Sydney in a month's time. So it's coming very close. I'm part of the National Organizing Committee of this Congress. This is basically the Olympics of work and safety. So if you work in that space, you absolutely need to be present. We're expecting 4,000 attendees from more than 150 countries. It's going to be huge. It's on 4 days. A lot of topic. The topic of the future world of work will be addressed there, but that and a lot more. So this is a one-time opportunity to know, like get a download on what's happening in work and safety across the world, but also create connections, and learn from others. And that's me, Chris.
Thanks, Greg. Good luck with that 23rd World Congress in Sydney next month. And if anyone out there is interested, I'm sure you can get details off the web and off the internet. We do have some questions to get through. Appreciate your presentation, Greg. So if you do have a question, remember, use the Q&A chat box on the right of your screen. We'll get to as many as we can. First up, Greg, from Sarah, can you talk more about how AI could be used to improve safety in workplaces?
To improve safety, so solution created through AI to improve safety. That's a good question. Look, I don't have a specific example in mind at the moment, but I will tell you that AI changed the work environment, which means that it changed the roles and responsibility of workers. What they do in the workplace, and so times to times it prevents harm that way. So it might take the AI system might take the the previous role of the workers in that roles was very high risk, etc., etc. What we need to focus on as well is on whether this new work environment creates that were not anticipated. I think that's the question. That's the approach that we have here.
What do you say then, a follow-up question from me, about older people who fear AI and automation, that it's taking away our jobs and prospective jobs of younger people that, you know, I'm not just saying AI, but automation as well?
Yeah, I would say that, look, there is plenty of publication on that topic that shows that there's no job losses, it's job change, really. This is what, we as a society, we're evolving. So the jobs that we had, 100 years ago, they're not the same that we have today, and it's not going to be the same in 100 years. So this question of progress and innovation and how it affects, workplaces, is a continuous question. It's a perpetual question. What I will say is that most often than not, like, jobs are not lost per se, or at least that's my perception of it. They're not lost; they change. And from a work of safety perspective, our focus should be, okay, what's the change? Yes, it solves some problem because some of these, old roles or old jobs, they were creating harm. We didn't know how to prevent them or to address them. So having AI system doing the work is actually a good safety measure. But having it is creating new roles, new responsibilities, new tasks, and we need to have a very good understanding of what ARMA created through those.
Yep. So which brings us to Colin's question, which is probably the right time to bring this one in. What are staff reactions to using cobots at work?
What was that? Sorry, I missed that.
Colin wants to know, what are staff reactions? What's the workplace reacting like, employees, to using cobots at work?
Yeah, look, that's a good question. I would say it varies. Look, I won't have the details of this. I think it varies for everyone. I will answer that differently. I would say some of the risks that we identify with the introduction of a new technology on the work site, right? Whether it's AI system or cobots or whatever else, really, it applies as well, is that there is a bit of uncertainty from the worker that are already in place, and back to your previous point about what's going to happen to me. And so there's a series of risks that are created about managing the change, right, from a workplace that do not have AI system or cobots in place to a workplace that have it. And how do you manage the change and make sure that through the process you maintain the health and safety of the workers that are within your work site?
John has been watching intently. He has a question about those who might be thinking about using cobots, AI, etc. So moving with the times, as you said earlier, Greg. How does a small business get started in this space particularly? They're not over-resourced, and quite often they're time poor and resource poor. How do they get started?
Look, that's not my area of expertise, but I would say you have people that specialize in this. You have designers, distributors that have AI systems. So, if depending on your sector, you in your work activities, really, you can find those people. You can find those companies that are distributing AI solutions that might be relevant for you particular workplace. So have a look at it. Identify what might be useful. And then, the second consideration is that if you do consider introducing an AI system in the workplace, then that brings what I discussed about today. The health and safety consideration of it.
Yep. Thanks, Louise, for joining us today. And Greg, Louise is interested in whether you are looking into programs that will take a photo of a work site and then identify hazards. So using technology to identify possible problems.
Yeah, look, this is more like a data science conversation, which I'm happy to have. There's also imaging provided from satellites or drones that could be used to identify work site, for example, that might have difficulty being compliant. That's a nice idea. It's extremely difficult to implement in reality, in real life. That's not off the card, but like obviously, this is one of those development that I was talking about, this new technology development. We consider it from a workplace perspective, developing new solutions, to prevent harm, but also from a regulatory perspective. What can we use that's been developed from a technological perspective that can improve our regulatory practice? I think that might be part of it.
Yep. Greg, Summer would like to hear about how you assess psychosocial hazards associated with introducing new ways of working. For example, do the assessment instruments consider the risk of a worker being forced to work even when dangerous levels of, say, silica are detected?
Yes, so that brings a little bit. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question, but like, yes, the psychosocial aspect of the harm is considered when we look at. I think the question was around when you have a new technology that is introduced in the workplace, and whether psychosocial harm were part of this list of risks that we consider. Absolutely, we look at all the risk and all the different type of harm that those risks can create. So I think the most difficult question is how do you mitigate those risks? And sometimes what we already have in place, let's say, to manage psychosocial risk, to make sure that we prevent the potential harm, what we have already in place is not maybe suitable for managing the risk related to the introduction of AI system in the workplace. I hope that was clear.
Colin asks, how can we access the National Worker Survey?
Oh, it's available online. So we do it every 6 months. So there's one running in February next year, and we just did one in August. So during that month, we have a whole media campaign where. So if you follow us on the media platform, you will definitely hear about it. It's just a link that we provide to anyone that wants to participate. So at the moment it's closed, but it will be reopened in February. Yeah.
Yep. Leander then, as a follow-up, wants to know how to follow you on social media.
Follow me. Oh, you can find me everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so I'm very happy to connect with any of the audience, have a conversation out of session.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get the team onto that at the end of the presentation. A thought-provoking question from Martin. We know that humans are not perfect and make mistakes that lead to harm. Blame fixes nothing. However, is there any research into how the extent of human mistakes can be reduced?
Look, like the clear answer for me is that I don't know. I'm not. I don't know if there is any. I would expect that there is. What I will tell you though is that this is, yes, human mistakes happens, but it happens within a context. So in the worker safety prevention world, what we're looking at is mostly the system and the processes that are in place around the worker, and that will make sure that if a human mistake happened, it can be isolated. It's not, or at least it can be reduced through the system and process you have around the worker.
So minimise the damage that mistake could actually cause.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right.
From Liz, she'd like to know, is the radar report New South Wales focused or Australia-wide data?
Australia-wide. So the data that we use, some of it is New South Wales focused because we do have access as a New South Wales agencies to New South Wales data, but the most of it, the horizon scanning, the consultation is Australia-wide. So the radar itself is applicable to Australia. Yeah.
And one from me to wrap up proceedings today. Can you share any insight into what's coming up in the next radar report? And are there any sneak peeks you can share with us today? A little scoop I'd like to finish with.
A scoop. I can tell you that we'll have a spotlight this time around generative AI. So, the use of things like ChatGPT, for example, the use of it in workplace, the different use of it. And so, yeah, it's going to be an interesting chat. So there will be a few pages on that particular topic.
Gregory, thank you very much for the scoop and for sharing your presentation with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys. Really appreciate it.
Dr Gregory Zelic, who joined us for our special Work Well presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Now, a little bit of homework for you, if you so choose. Before we go, we'd love to hear your feedback on today's presentation. So please grab your phone and scan the QR code that's on your screen right now and take a short survey. It'll only take a couple of minutes. These are very important for us because it'll help us formulate presentations in the future and it'll give us your feedback direct. Key takeaways from Gregory's live stream will be available on worksafe.qld.gov.au in the coming days, along with his presentation. You can also re-watch today's full session via the Watch Live link you are using today if you're really eager to share or catch up straight away. We'll also upload Gregory's presentation onto the same page, so keep your eye out for that at a later date. While we're on our website, check out our full range of case studies, podcasts, speaker recordings, webinars and films to help you take action to improve your WHS and return to work outcomes. These resources are free to download, so I encourage you to share them with your staff and, of course, your wider networks. Well, that brings us to a conclusion for today's session. On behalf of WorkSafe Health and Safety Queensland, thanks for joining us for this special Work Well presentation by Dr Gregory Zelic. Remember, October is Safe Work Month, and as always, we leave you with this message. Work safe, home safe, bye for now.